Hello. Something that came up for me today is the parable of the poisoned arrow. So, this came about because the Buddha was being questioned about metaphysical things. So, you see that a lot in life. People want to know more, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with questioning. We should always be questioning ourselves and questioning things and trying to figure things out and dig deeper. I mean, this all makes sense. But there's a fine line to when you start questioning, maybe in an obsessive manner or a clinging manner or an attachment type of questioning. Like you're so fixated, you can't focus on anything else. Or you're pushing so hard that the answer isn't going to come when you're so tense and stressed and craving that answer so much. And when you want, and desire, or you lust after having that answer. And what's the intention behind it? Why do you want to know about metaphysical things? So, I mean, this could be different for everyone. And there's nothing wrong with gathering information. But in this aspect, the Buddha would be reluctant or not answer questions of such a manner. And mainly, I feel because he wanted us to look at things for ourselves. But this is the parable that came about from being questioned in such a manner. I'll read it to you. So it says, "It's just as if a man were wounded with an arrow thickly smeared with poison. His friends and companions, kinsmen and relatives would provide him with a surgeon, and the man would say, 'I won't have this arrow removed until I know the man who wounded me was a noble warrior, a priest, a merchant, or a worker.' He would say, 'I won't have this arrow removed until I know the given name and clan name of the man who wounded me. Until I know whether the man was tall, medium, or short. Until I know whether he was dark, ruddy, brown, or golden colored. Until I know his home, village, town, or city. Until I know whether the bow with which I was wounded was a long bow or a crossbow. Until I know whether the bowstring with which I was wounded with was fiber, bamboo, threads, hemp, or bark. Until I know whether the shaft with which I was wounded was wild or cultivated. Until I know whether the feathers of the shaft with which I was wounded were those of a vulture, a stork, a hawk, a peacock, or another bird. Until I know whether the shaft with which I was wounded was bound with the thread of ox or water buffalo or monkey. He would say, 'I won't have this arrow removed until I know whether the shaft with which I was wounded was that of a common arrow, a curved arrow, a calf-toothed, or any other type of arrow.' The man would die, and those things would still remain unknown to him." So, what I gather from this is that his mind was so fixated on needing to know all of these characteristics of the arrow, of the person, of the whole scenario, instead of focusing on what needed to be done in that present moment. How many times do we do that in life? We're there in the present moment, but our thoughts are so scattered and our thoughts are elsewhere. We aren't able to fully be present because we have all these other things and conditions on our minds. And our minds do that. Our minds are very busy, very active. There's a lot going on. So it's important to take the time to process things, which means, not overextending yourself. Do what you can, but when you keep being busy and busy and busy, it's not going to serve you well. You get burnt out. You do too much. It's great to help others, but if you aren't replenished in your own energy, then you can't help others as well as they may need. And you're not doing yourself any favors either. There's the expression of make sure your cup is full and overpouring. And when it's overpouring, that's when you're giving. And when your cup is full, that's when your energy is at a level where you're able to do that. But there are times we need to rest, and there are times we can't do that. Another expression is empty your cup, which means empty it of all those conditions. I was a server and a bartender for many years. And I remember one of my bosses said to me upon hiring me that I shouldn't bring in things from other places that I've worked. I should come in fresh and learn the way that they do it and not be hung up on the way that I've learned to do it. And it also reminds me of a woman who has Tao classes, which I've attended. And the teaching there is to empty your cup. Come in without all these other things and just be with what is at that moment. Take it in without applying all these other conditions and beliefs and things to it. Just let it be what it is. In Zen Buddhism, beginner's mind is important. It doesn't matter how long you've been cultivating. Come in with a fresh mind because everything gets deeper and deeper. You might think you know it all, like a child. If you tell a child, do this, this, and this, and you've told them so many times, but they still don't do it, and they say, I know, I know, I know, but then when you watch, they aren't doing what you asked them to do. But yet they think they know. But if they really knew, they would do those things because it's for their own good. So this parable of the poisoned arrow. Life is short. If we get stuck questioning and hung up there and clinging to having to know this now before you can do anything else, it paralyzes us. And it can cause a long period of inaction. So these are just some things to consider. It reminds me of hammering a nail. So you hammer a nail into the board, But you can only hammer it so far. And once it becomes flush with the board, it won't go in any further. Unless you grab another tool and you hit that with the hammer, and it'll drive the nail in further. And eventually, if you continue to do that, the nail may fall right through the board, and then it won't hold anything together. And then if the wind blows, the board could just blow away. It's important to establish our foundation and see what the mind gets fixated on. Because we want to be like the bamboo shoot, which flows with the breeze, but always returns to center. We practice that, we'll be okay. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. Rest when you need it. Bye-bye.